The entire cathedral fell silent the moment Arabella Hayes refused to marry Chicago's most feared mafia don, because nobody had ever survived humiliating Dominic DeLuca in public. Rain hammered against the stained glass windows of St. Aurelius Cathedral, while Chicago's criminal elite filled the enormous hall beneath shadows and candlelight. Luxury dripped from every corner of the cathedral: gold-trimmed balconies, marble pillars, imported roses, and chandeliers expensive enough to feed entire neighborhoods for years. Yet despite the beauty surrounding the ceremony, the atmosphere felt cold, artificial, like fear hiding beneath expensive perfume. Arabella Hayes stood at the altar, wearing a white wedding gown heavy enough to feel like chains across her body. Every camera lens inside the cathedral focused on her face, while whispers spread quietly among powerful guests seated in the front rows. Politicians, judges, business owners, mafia leaders from New York, Chicago, and Boston all gathered to witness the marriage between the Hayes family and Dominic DeLuca, the man newspapers called a businessman, but the underworld called something far more dangerous: the King of Chicago. Arabella's hands trembled slightly beneath the lace gloves covering her fingers, not from love, from exhaustion. For most of her life, Arabella had existed quietly in the shadow of wealth without ever truly belonging to it. Her father, Vincent Hayes, once controlled successful shipping companies tied to Chicago's upper-class business world. Expensive schools, private parties, and luxury apartments shaped her childhood from the outside, but behind closed doors, her family had been collapsing for years. Debt swallowed their fortune slowly. Strange men began appearing outside their home late at night. Her father spent endless hours inside locked offices making nervous phone calls while pretending everything remained normal. Entire sections of their company disappeared through mysterious financial losses nobody explained publicly. And worst of all, Vincent Hayes stopped looking at his daughter like family. He started looking at her like survival. Arabella noticed the change long before the wedding arrangement appeared. Her father became emotionally distant, paranoid, and constantly afraid of something invisible surrounding him. Several times she overheard arguments involving names connected to organized crime, though Vincent always denied any involvement afterward. Then Dominic DeLuca entered their lives. The marriage arrangement arrived disguised as opportunity. Publicly, the union represented a powerful business alliance between respected families. Media outlets praised the upcoming wedding as a symbol of financial recovery for the Hayes Corporation, but privately, Arabella understood the truth immediately. Her father was trading her for protection. That realization destroyed whatever emotional trust remained between them. The cathedral doors opened behind her as soft music echoed through the massive hall. Guests turned their attention toward the front aisle, where Dominic DeLuca finally appeared beside armed security dressed in black formal suits. The atmosphere changed instantly. Fear moved faster than sound inside the cathedral. Even wealthy politicians lowered their voices when Dominic entered the room. Rival mafia figures avoided direct eye contact. Several socialites seated near the front rows visibly stiffened beneath forced smiles. Power followed Dominic naturally. Not loud power, controlled power. Tall, sharply dressed, and emotionally unreadable, Dominic carried himself with the calm confidence of someone accustomed to life-and-death decisions. His reputation alone terrified cities. Rumors connected him to disappearances, political corruption, underground violence, and financial empires stretching across the East Coast. But what unsettled Arabella most was not his reputation. It was his silence. Dominic never needed attention. The room surrendered it automatically. As he approached the altar beneath dim cathedral lighting, Arabella studied him carefully for the first time up close. Dark eyes, controlled expression, no visible emotion despite hundreds of guests watching every movement. He looked less like a groom and more like someone attending a funeral. Perhaps he already knew the marriage was dead before it started. The ceremony began slowly beneath towering stained glass saints overlooking the cathedral. Priests recited sacred vows while photographers documented every second for newspapers already prepared to celebrate the alliance publicly by morning. Arabella barely heard any of it. Her attention remained trapped between the suffocating atmosphere around her and the growing panic inside her chest. Every instinct screamed that something deeply wrong existed beneath the wedding. This was not marriage. It was negotiation disguised in white silk and religion, Across the cathedral, elite women connected to criminal dynasties whispered quietly while observing Arabella with subtle judgment. Their expensive jewelry reflected candlelight as they evaluated her appearance, posture, and background. Arabella recognized the looks instantly. Disapproval. Though wealthy by normal standards, the Hayes family lacked old mafia bloodlines tied to generational power. To many people inside the cathedral, Arabella remained an outsider, a privileged girl from a declining business family pretending she belonged among criminal royalty. Some of the judgment carried another layer, too. Her mother had been Colombian-American, and despite decades of public sophistication, parts of Chicago's elite circles still viewed mixed heritage as weakness hidden beneath elegance. Nobody insulted Arabella openly. People like them preferred quieter cruelty. A woman near the second row murmured something about temporary bloodlines before smiling politely toward nearby cameras. Another guest joked softly about Dominic rescuing a financially dying family. Arabella heard enough to understand the message clearly. She was tolerated, not accepted. The emotional isolation pressing against her life for years tightened harder beneath the cathedral lights. Then the vows began. The priest turned toward Dominic first. Dominic answered calmly. His voice remained controlled and steady, almost attached, as though the marriage itself meant nothing personally. Then everyone looked toward Arabella. The cathedral fell silent. For one suspended moment, she saw the future waiting ahead as she obeyed quietly, endless luxury masking emotional imprisonment, violent men pretending civilization existed around them, children raised inside corruption disguised as power. And somewhere within that future, Arabella saw herself disappearing completely. That realization finally broke her fear. She lifted her eyes toward Dominic. Then she spoke. "I refuse." The words echoed across the cathedral like gunfire. Shock consumed the room instantly. Several guests physically froze in disbelief, while whispers exploded beneath the silence seconds later. One politician nearly dropped his glass near the front pews. Rival mafia figures exchanged stunned looks, while photographers hesitated uncertainly between documenting history or protecting themselves from whatever happened next. Nobody had ever publicly humiliated Dominic DeLuca before, especially not at the altar. Arabella's father turned pale immediately. Vincent Hayes looked seconds away from collapse as panic flooded his expression beneath the cathedral lights. He understood consequences better than anyone else in the room. Men disappeared over smaller insults. The tension became suffocating. Security guards subtly shifted positions near exits. Several guests lowered their heads instinctively, unwilling to witness Dominic's reaction directly. Yet Dominic remained perfectly calm. That frightened Arabella more than anger would have. He studied her silently for several long seconds while the cathedral waited for violence to erupt. No rage appeared across his face. No public humiliation. No threats. Only cold observation. Like he expected this outcome already. The silence stretched painfully before Dominic finally stepped closer toward Arabella beneath the altar candles. For the first time during the entire ceremony, genuine emotion flickered briefly behind his eyes. Not hatred. Disappointment. Then something unexpected happened. Dominic reached inside his jacket and removed a thick sealed envelope before placing it carefully into Arabella's trembling hands. The movement confused everyone watching. Arabella stared down at the envelope uncertainly. Her father reacted instantly after seeing it, panic darkening his face with terrifying intensity. Whatever existed inside clearly frightened him more than Dominic himself. "Open it," Dominic said quietly. The cathedral remained silent enough to hear breathing. Arabella slowly broke the seal beneath hundreds of watching eyes. Inside rested several photographs, financial records, and old newspaper clippings connected to her father's shipping company from years earlier. At first, none of it made sense. Then she noticed one particular image. Her father stood beside armed men, unloading cargo, containers near Chicago Harbor late at night. Another photograph showed Vincent Hayes shaking hands with known criminal figures tied to trafficking investigations buried decades earlier. Arabella's stomach tightened painfully. The man she spent years pitying suddenly looked unfamiliar. More documents followed beneath the photographs. Hidden financial transfers, offshore accounts, coded shipment routes, and names connected to organized crime syndicates across multiple states. Her father had not fallen into debt accidentally. He had been involved with dangerous people for years. The emotional shock nearly overwhelmed her as realization spread slowly through Cathedral. Guests whispered more aggressively now, while several mafia leaders watched Vincent Hayes with open hostility. Dominic had not exposed the documents randomly. He was sending a message. Arabella finally lifted her eyes back toward him, struggling to understand why he revealed the truth publicly instead of retaliating against rejection. Dominic's expression remained unreadable beneath the cathedral lights. But his next words changed everything. "Your father didn't just steal money," Dominic said quietly enough that only nearby guests could hear clearly. "He stole something powerful enough to start a war." Arabella thought refusing the marriage would free her, until she learned her father's darkest secret could destroy her entire family forever. The silence inside St. Aurelius Cathedral did not end after Dominic DeLuca exposed the documents. It deepened. Guests whispered beneath lowered voices, while armed security quietly repositioned themselves near the exits. Politicians who had entered the wedding smiling now looked desperate to leave unnoticed. Several mafia figures studied Vincent Hayes with visible hostility, as though recalculating years of hidden betrayal in real time. Arabella barely heard any of it. Her attention remained fixed on the photographs trembling inside her hands. Her father stood beside criminals. Not businessmen pretending corruption. Real criminals. Weapons. Cargo containers. Offshore ledgers. Hidden financial transfers connected to names federal agencies had investigated for years. The evidence looked undeniable. Yet what disturbed Arabella most was not the documents themselves. It was a fear consuming her father's face. Vincent Hayes no longer resembled a wealthy businessman protecting family reputation. He looked like a terrified man watching his past crawl out of the grave. And somehow, Dominic controlled that grave completely. The ceremony ended without another word. No public confrontation followed. No dramatic threats. Dominic simply turned away from the altar, while security teams quietly escorted important guests toward waiting vehicles outside the cathedral. The restraint felt unnatural. Men like Dominic DeLuca were rumored to destroy entire organizations over disrespect. Yet Arabella had rejected him publicly in front of Chicago's criminal elite, and he responded with calm silence instead of violence. That terrified her more than rage ever could, because controlled men were unpredictable. By midnight, Arabella understood refusing the marriage had not freed her from Dominic's world. It had trapped her deeper inside it. Black armored vehicles transported her across rain-covered Chicago streets toward Dominic's estate overlooking Lake Michigan. Officially, she was being placed under temporary protection due to threats connected to her father's exposed crimes. Unofficially, she was a hostage. The mansion appeared less like a home and more like a fortress built for kings expecting war. Massive iron gates guarded the entrance, while armed men patrolled the property with military precision. Surveillance cameras tracked every movement across the enormous lakeside estate. Luxury existed everywhere. Fear existed louder. Inside, the mansion glowed beneath soft golden lighting and expensive architecture imported from Europe. Marble staircases curved beneath crystal chandeliers, while original artwork covered walls worth millions of dollars. Yet despite the beauty surrounding her, Arabella immediately sensed the truth. Nothing inside the estate belonged to freedom. The mansion operated like a luxury prison. Staff members moved carefully through hallways with lowered eyes. Security guards remained positioned near nearly every exit. Even the silence felt controlled, as though the entire building understood violence could erupt at any moment. Arabella's assigned room overlooked Lake Michigan through enormous glass windows stretching from floor to ceiling. Expensive furniture, fresh flowers, designer clothing, and untouched meals waited inside. A perfect cage. She stood near the windows for nearly an hour staring toward the dark water outside, while emotional confusion tightened inside her chest. Part of her still wanted to believe the documents revealed that the cathedral were fake. Some manipulation Dominic created to force the marriage publicly. But deep down, she already knew otherwise. Her father's reaction had exposed the truth more clearly than any evidence. Vincent Hayes was hiding something catastrophic. The realization shattered years of trust all at once. A quiet knock interrupted her thoughts sometime after midnight. One of the household staff entered carefully carrying tea on a silver tray. The woman looked older, perhaps in her late 50s, with nervous eyes that avoided direct contact. "Mr. DeLuca requests that you remain inside the estate for your safety," she explained softly before quickly leaving the room. "For your safety." The phrase repeated constantly throughout the mansion over the following days. Every locked door, every armed guard, every monitored hallway, all justified through protection. Arabella quickly noticed another unsettling pattern, too. People inside the estate feared her. Not personally. Strategically, servants whispered whenever she passed through corridors. Security teams monitored her movements more carefully than other guests. Several employees even stopped conversations entirely after noticing her nearby. At first, she assumed the fear connected to her rejected wedding and public humiliation of Dominic. Then she overheard two guards speaking privately near the lower library. "She matters now," one muttered quietly. "That's exactly why she won't survive long," the other answered. The words followed Arabella through the mansion afterward like ghosts. Someone wanted her dead. That suspicion intensified after Dominic finally explained part of the situation himself. 3 nights after the failed wedding, Arabella encountered him inside the mansion library shortly after midnight. Rain hammered softly against the tall windows, while dim lighting cast shadows across endless shelves of antique books and financial records. Dominic stood alone near the fireplace, reviewing documents with the same controlled calm that made him so terrifying publicly. For several silent moments, neither spoke. Then Arabella noticed blood staining his cuff. Fresh blood. Dominic calmly folded the sleeve lower without explanation, but the brief glimpse confirmed something important. Violence followed him constantly. Not chaotic violence. Professional violence. Arabella gathered enough courage to ask the question haunting her thoughts since the cathedral. "What did my father steal?" Dominic remained silent, initially, studying the fire instead of her. Then he answered carefully. "Evidence." The single word shifted the atmosphere immediately. Dominic explained that years earlier, several powerful criminal organizations secretly partner with politicians, shipping corporations, and federal contacts to build illegal financial systems hidden beneath legitimate international trade routes. Drug trafficking, weapons transportation, human exploitation. Billions of dollars moved through invisible channels protected by corruption at every level. Vincent Hayes handled portions of the shipping infrastructure connected to those operations. Then something disappeared. Financial records, encrypted ledgers, evidence powerful enough to expose politicians, mafia families, business executives, and federal officials simultaneously. And according to Dominic, people had been killing each other quietly for years trying to recover it. Arabella listened in growing horror, while another realization slowly formed beneath the fear. Dominic was dangerous, but even he sounded cautious discussing the stolen evidence. That meant forces larger than organized crime were involved. The emotional weight of the truth became suffocating over the following week. Arabella began investigating her father's past secretly throughout the mansion, using old newspaper archives, financial records, and restricted files hidden inside Dominic's library systems. The deeper she searched, the darker the story became. Her father's shipping company repeatedly appeared near criminal investigations that mysteriously vanished. Several former employees connected to his business operations died under suspicious circumstances years earlier. Offshore accounts linked to political figures surfaced beside coded transactions impossible to explain legally. And buried beneath those records, one name appeared repeatedly: Victor Kane. Unlike Dominic, Victor Kane operated publicly as a billionaire investor and philanthropist connected to Chicago's elite social circles. Television interviews portrayed him as sophisticated, intelligent, and politically influential. But inside organized crime networks, rumors painted a far darker image. Victor did not control territory through violence. He controlled systems, banks, judges, media corporations, federal connections. If Dominic ruled fear, Victor ruled corruption. The tension between both men infected nearly every conversation inside the mansion. Security increased whenever Victor's name surfaced. Dominic's closest associates treated him less like a rival and more like a catastrophe waiting to happen. Arabella slowly realized the stolen evidence connected directly to Victor's empire, and somehow her father stood at the center of it. The mansion itself became increasingly oppressive as paranoia spread through the estate. Surveillance cameras monitored nearly every hallway. Restricted areas multiplied overnight. Some doors required fingerprint access, while armed guards remained posted outside private offices constantly. Arabella even discovered hidden microphones inside decorative wall fixtures near her bedroom. Nothing inside the mansion happened privately. That realization intensified after elite women connected to mafia families began visiting the estate regularly. Their expensive clothing and polished smiles disguised manipulation sharper than knives. One woman casually implied Arabella lacked the right blood to survive among powerful families. Another mocked her Colombian heritage subtly during afternoon tea while discussing traditional American values. The insults remained elegant enough to avoid confrontation, but the message stayed clear. Arabella would never truly belong inside their world. Those visits carried another purpose too: intimidation. The women questioned Arabella constantly about the stolen evidence, her father's behavior, and Dominic's growing interest in protecting her. Every conversation felt like psychological interrogation hidden beneath social politeness. Someone desperately wanted information, and someone equally desperate wanted Arabella's silence before she discovered too much. The fear became personal one stormy evening after Arabella returned to her room and noticed certain belongings had moved slightly. Her closet stood partially open despite remembering it closed earlier. One jewelry drawer remained unlocked. Someone searched her room. Heart pounding, Arabella began checking the suite carefully until she discovered a tiny hidden camera installed beneath the bedroom mirror. Panic tightened her chest instantly. She was not simply being protected. She was being watched constantly. That night, unable to sleep, Arabella wandered downstairs toward the restricted east wing of the mansion, where Dominic stored older archives connected to family operations. Most rooms remained locked. One office door, however, stood slightly open. Inside, dim desk lighting illuminated scattered photographs and financial records across a large wooden table. Arabella entered cautiously before noticing one specific image, lying near the edge of the desk. The photograph looked old and partially damaged. 3 men stood near Chicago Harbor beside cargo containers years earlier. One was her father, the second was Victor Kane, and the third made Arabella's blood run cold. Because according to every rumor surrounding Dominic DeLuca's past, the man smiling beside her father in the photograph was Dominic's murdered younger brother. Everyone believed Dominic wanted Arabella as his bride, but the terrifying truth was far more personal than revenge. The old photograph refused to leave Arabella's mind. For the rest of the night, she sat alone inside her room staring at the image she secretly copied from Dominic's office. Her father stood beside Victor Kane near the harbor docks, but it was the third man that unsettled her most. Luca DeLuca, Dominic's younger brother. The same brother whose murder had transformed Dominic from an ambitious young businessman into the most feared mafia don in Chicago. The realization changed everything Arabella thought she understood. This was never simply about a stolen financial ledger or political corruption. Her father had somehow been connected to the death that destroyed Dominic's family. And if Dominic already knew the truth, then the wedding had never been about alliance. It had been about revenge. Rain poured heavily outside the mansion windows, while Arabella's thoughts spiraled deeper into paranoia. Every memory involving Dominic suddenly carried a different meaning. His calm behavior at the cathedral, the strange emotional restraint whenever he looked at her, the decision to protect her instead of retaliating publicly. Perhaps he never wanted her love. Perhaps he only wanted her close enough to suffer. The emotional weight of that possibility made sleep impossible. By morning, the atmosphere inside the mansion felt colder than before. Security teams moved aggressively through hallways, while Dominic's inner circle conducted private meetings behind locked doors. Tension infected the state like poison spreading silently through blood. Something dangerous was approaching. Arabella sensed it in the nervous behavior of servants and the growing hostility among Dominic's men. Even conversations stopped whenever she entered certain rooms. Fear surrounded her now from every direction, not because of who she was, because of what she represented. Later that afternoon, Arabella finally learned more about Dominic's past from an elderly house manager named Evelyn Mercer, one of the few people inside the mansion willing to speak honestly around her. Evelyn had worked for the DeLuca family long before Dominic gained power. Age softened her voice, but not the sadness hidden beneath it. Dominic wasn't born into violence the way people think, Evelyn explained quietly while arranging flowers in the library. His father wanted legitimate business, construction, real estate. The family only became dangerous after Luca died. Arabella listened silently while Evelyn continued. Years earlier, Dominic and Luca DeLuca had grown up in one of Chicago's roughest Italian neighborhoods, where survival mattered more than morality. Their mother died young. Their father worked endlessly trying to keep the family away from organized crime despite constant pressure from surrounding gangs. Dominic protected Luca obsessively growing up. The younger brother represented the last innocent part of his life. Unlike Dominic, Luca remained hopeful, educated, compassionate. He believed the DeLuca family could eventually leave criminal influence behind completely. Then he disappeared. 3 weeks later, his body was discovered near Chicago Harbor beside burned shipping containers connected to federal smuggling investigations. The murder shattered Dominic psychologically. Police blamed rival organizations, but rumors inside the underworld suggested something far worse: betrayal from within their own business network. After Luca's death, Dominic changed completely. The young man who once dreamed about legal business empires vanished. In his place rose someone colder, more strategic, and emotionally unreachable. Someone who built power through fear, because grief left him incapable of trusting anything else. As Evelyn spoke, Arabella slowly understood why Dominic's reputation terrified people so deeply. He did not crave violence emotionally. Violence became the language he learned after love failed him. That realization complicated her hatred in dangerous ways, because monsters were easier to fear before understanding how they were created. The following evening introduced another powerful figure into Dominic's world: Naomi Pierce. Officially, Naomi worked as a federal investigator attached to Chicago's Anti-Corruption Division. Publicly, she carried a polished reputation for dismantling organized crime networks across the East Coast. But inside the mansion, nobody trusted her presence. Tall, intelligent, and emotionally unreadable, Naomi arrived wearing expensive black formal wear that blurred the line between government authority and elite social influence. Armed federal agents accompanied her vehicle, yet Dominic personally allowed her access into the estate without resistance. That alone told Arabella something important. Naomi Pierce possessed enough power to negotiate directly with mafia kings. Their meeting took place inside Dominic's private office, while guards secured every hallway nearby. Arabella remained hidden near the staircase above, listening carefully as fragmented of conversation drifted upward through partially open doors. Names surfaced repeatedly: politicians, judges, shipping executives, federal departments. The scale of corruption shocked her completely. Entire branches of government secretly depended on criminal money flowing through offshore systems connected to Victor Kane's organization. Elections were manipulated through hidden financing. Court cases disappeared after private negotiations. Even law enforcement agencies accepted selective corruption whenever powerful enough people benefited financially. America's elite systems were not broken accidentally. They were designed this way intentionally. The intellectual realization disturbed Arabella deeply because it destroyed another illusion she carried most of her life: the belief that wealth and authority automatically created morality. Naomi eventually left the mansion without arresting anyone, which told Arabella something even more disturbing. People like Naomi no longer investigated corruption. They managed it. That night, Arabella confronted her father through a private encrypted phone call secretly arranged through one of the mansion employees. Vincent Hayes answered immediately, sounding exhausted and emotionally unstable. At first, he denied everything again. Then Arabella mentioned Luca DeLuca. The silence on the line became unbearable. Finally, Vincent admitted part of the truth. Years earlier, he worked directly with criminal shipping networks tied to Victor Kane's financial empire. At first, the operations involved illegal imports and money laundering hidden beneath legitimate cargo transportation. But eventually, the network expanded into trafficking, weapons, human smuggling, political bribery. Vincent claimed he wanted out after discovering how dangerous the organization truly became. Luca DeLuca secretly helped gather evidence, exposing Victor Kane's operation from inside the network itself. Then Luca disappeared before the evidence reached federal authorities. Arabella's entire body went cold listening to the confession. Her father had not merely worked near organized crime. He helped build part of it. And somewhere inside that darkness, Dominic lost his brother forever. The emotional betrayal shattered something deep inside her. Memories of childhood safety and family loyalty suddenly felt artificial, built upon lies hidden beneath wealth and social status. For the first time in her life, Arabella genuinely understood isolation. Meanwhile, pressure against Dominic intensified across Chicago's criminal world. Rival families viewed Arabella as weakness now. Elite social circles mocked Dominic privately for protecting a woman connected to betrayal, instead of eliminating her immediately. The discrimination surrounding Arabella worsened too. Several powerful mafia wives openly insulted her mixed heritage during private gatherings inside the mansion. Others treated her like an opportunist manipulating Dominic emotionally for protection. Old money families always needed someone beneath them. Arabella became the perfect target. Yet Dominic reacted violently whenever the insults reached him. One evening during a gathering of criminal financiers, a wealthy businessman drunkenly referred to Arabella as the harbor trader's daughter, while mocking Dominic's judgment publicly. The room fell silent instantly. Dominic crossed the ballroom slowly, without raising his voice once. Then he broke the man's jaw in front of everyone. No shouting, no emotional explosion, only controlled brutality cold enough to terrify the entire gathering. Blood stained the marble floor, while security dragged the injured businessman away. Nobody defended him. Nobody challenged Dominic afterward. But Arabella noticed something important hidden beneath the violence. Dominic was losing emotional control whenever her safety or dignity became involved. That frightened him too. Over the following weeks, Arabella began noticing small fragments of humanity beneath Dominic's cold exterior. He often worked through entire nights alone in the library without sleeping. Some mornings she caught him staring silently toward Lake Michigan with an expression carrying exhaustion deeper than anger. He remained dangerous, but loneliness surrounded him constantly. And somewhere inside the emotional distance separating them, a fragile attachment slowly formed despite every reason it should not exist. Arabella hated herself for noticing it, because understanding Dominic emotionally made escaping him harder. Yet escape remained her obsession. She secretly mapped sections of the mansion, monitored guard schedules, and searched constantly for routes beyond the estate walls. But psychological warfare infected every part of Dominic's organization. No one trusted anyone anymore. Surveillance increased weekly. Dominic's inner circle suspected betrayal from multiple rival families. Hidden microphones appeared inside guest rooms. Security teams interrogated employees privately after minor mistakes. The mansion no longer resembled a luxury estate. It resembled a kingdom preparing for war. Then one night, Arabella accidentally overheard the conversation that changed everything. Unable to sleep, she wandered toward the East Wing Library after midnight, when unfamiliar voices echoed from Dominic's private meeting room nearby. Victor Kane. Arabella recognized his voice immediately from televised interviews and old recordings connected to her father's files. She froze behind the partially open hallway door while the conversation continued inside. Victor sounded calm, almost amused. "Dominic's become emotional," he said quietly. "That makes him vulnerable." Another voice asked what should happen next. Victor answered without hesitation. "Eliminate him before he destroys everything." The moment rival mafia leaders realized Dominic would protect Arabella at any cost, they secretly marked her for death. The conversation Arabella overheard outside Dominic's private meeting room changed the atmosphere inside the mansion overnight. Victor Kane wanted Dominic dead, not weakened, not politically destroyed, eliminated. And somehow, Arabella had become the center of the war growing between them. By morning, security throughout the estate doubled without explanation. Armed guards patrolled every hallway while surveillance teams monitored all incoming communications. Dominic's inner circle moved through the mansion with visible tension, speaking quietly and checking weapons more often than before. Fear infected the estate openly now. No one trusted anyone. Arabella barely slept after hearing Victor's assassination order. Every shadow inside the mansion suddenly felt dangerous. Every passing conversation sounded like hidden conspiracy. Even footsteps outside her bedroom door triggered panic deep enough to tighten her chest painfully. She wanted to leave. But deep down, Arabella understood the terrifying truth. The outside world had become just as dangerous as Dominic's mansion, because now people believed she mattered to him. That belief alone made her a target. The first threat arrived 2 days later. No signature, no fingerprints, only a black envelope delivered through regular mail directly into Arabella's room, despite the mansion's impossible security. Inside rested a single photograph showing her walking near the estate gardens earlier that afternoon. Across the image, someone had written 3 words in red ink: "He cannot save you." Arabella's hands trembled violently while reading it. Someone had watched her close enough to take the photograph, which meant either the mansion security was failing or betrayal already existed inside Dominic's organization. Dominic reacted immediately after seeing the threat. The emotional restraint defining him for weeks cracked visibly for the first time. His jaw tightened while cold fury darkened his expression in ways that unsettled even his own guards. Within hours, several staff members disappeared from duty entirely, while Dominic's security teams interrogated employees across the estate. No one explained where the missing workers went afterward. Arabella stopped asking questions she feared hearing answered. Over the following days, Dominic became almost violently protective. He assigned guards outside her room 24 hours a day. Her movements throughout the mansion required armed escort. Every meal underwent security inspection before reaching her table. At first, Arabella resented the suffocating control. Then she discovered another hidden threat waiting inside her closet: a dead black rose wrapped in wire. No one knew how it got there. That was the moment the fear became real. Not symbolic, not psychological. Someone inside the estate wanted her dead badly enough to bypass Dominic's security repeatedly. And judging by the increasing tension consuming the mansion, powerful people were preparing for something catastrophic. The pressure exploded publicly during an elite mafia gathering held inside the historic Verona Hotel near downtown Chicago. Dominic rarely attended public meetings personally anymore, but growing instability among rival organizations forced him into direct negotiation. Political allies, financial executives, criminal leaders, and corrupt union representatives gathered beneath luxurious chandeliers, while armed security occupied every entrance. Arabella accompanied Dominic unwillingly, not because he trusted the meeting, because leaving her unprotected elsewhere had become even more dangerous. The ballroom atmosphere felt poisoned from the moment they arrived. Wealthy guests smiled politely while studying Arabella, like a problem needing removal. Rumors about her connection to Dominic spread aggressively through criminal circles now. Some believed she controlled hidden evidence connected to Victor Kane's empire. Others believed Dominic had become emotionally compromised because of her. Either way, she represented instability. And organized crime hated instability. Media corruption worsened everything further. Several newspapers suddenly published anonymous stories questioning Dominic's leadership and judgment. Television analysts connected to political networks mocked his obsession with protecting the daughter of a suspected traitor. Public opinion was being manipulated intentionally. Someone wanted Dominic isolated politically before war officially began. That night introduced Arabella to another dangerous figure within Chicago's elite underworld, Celeste Moretti. Unlike the older mafia wives who had cruelty behind elegance, Celeste weaponized beauty openly. Young, intelligent, and dangerously charismatic, she moved through the ballroom with the confidence of someone accustomed to controlling powerful men. Rumors connected her romantically to Dominic years earlier, before his empire fully expanded across Chicago. The tension between them remained impossible to ignore. Celeste greeted Arabella politely enough for nearby cameras, while quietly humiliating her beneath every word. Comments about temporary women and outsiders playing dangerous games carried subtle venom hidden beneath sophistication. But the true cruelty came later. During dinner service, several elite women intentionally switched seating arrangements, so Arabella ended up isolated beside lower-ranking guests while political wives and old-money families avoided her openly. The message spread clearly through the ballroom. She did not belong among them. One wealthy socialite even questioned whether Dominic forgot his standards after Luca's death changed him emotionally. The hidden racism beneath their behavior surfaced repeatedly throughout the evening. Arabella's Colombian heritage became another quiet weapon used against her through coded insults and dismissive remarks about mixed bloodlines, weakening traditional power structures. No one attacked her directly. Elite circles preferred elegant humiliation, but emotional damage cut just as deeply. Arabella spent most of the evening feeling trapped between hatred and exhaustion, while whispers followed her across the ballroom like smoke. Then Dominic noticed. The atmosphere shifted instantly after he realized what was happening. Without warning, Dominic abandoned an important political discussion near the ballroom center and crossed directly toward Arabella's table. Silence spread gradually as nearby guests watched his expression darken with controlled anger. He did not raise his voice. That made the moment more terrifying. Dominic calmly ordered several guests removed from the gathering before publicly canceling major business partnerships connected to families insulting Arabella throughout the evening. Millions of dollars disappeared from the room within minutes. Political alliances collapsed instantly, and for the first time, Chicago's criminal elite realized something deeply dangerous. Dominic was willing to sacrifice power for her. That revelation changed everything. By the following week, assassination rumors spread openly through organized crime circles. Rival families viewed Arabella as Dominic's emotional weakness now, the single vulnerability capable of destabilizing his empire from within. The attacks became more aggressive afterward. A vehicle following her security convoy exploded near downtown Chicago shortly after she passed through the intersection. Anonymous threats flooded the mansion phone lines. One of Dominic's guards was found dead near the estate gates with warnings carved into his chest. Fear consumed the mansion staff entirely. Servants avoided eye contact constantly. Security teams accused each other of leaking information. Several longtime employees abruptly resigned despite generous salaries and protection offers. The estate no longer resembled a home. It resembled a kingdom collapsing under paranoia. Meanwhile, Roman-style power struggles erupted between rival mafia leaders across Chicago. Smaller organizations began aligning secretly with Victor Kane, while others prepared for war against Dominic's shrinking alliances. Everyone sensed blood approaching. Federal pressure intensified too. Naomi Pierce returned repeatedly during the following weeks under the excuse of anti-corruption investigations, though Arabella noticed something unsettling about her behavior. Naomi never seemed surprised by new violence, almost like she expected events unfolding exactly this way. Secret federal files connected to trafficking operations also started leaking anonymously across media networks. Politicians resigned quietly. Financial executives vanished overseas. Entire corporations faced investigation overnight. Someone inside the criminal empire was exposing hidden systems publicly, and every leaked document increased the danger surrounding Arabella because her father's name remained connected to nearly all of them. The emotional pressure eventually became unbearable. One rainy evening, after another televised scandal involving her family, Arabella finally broke down alone inside the mansion greenhouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Months of fear, betrayal, humiliation, and emotional isolation collapsed at once beneath the glass ceiling covered in rainwater. She hated Dominic. Yet part of her no longer believed he was the true villain inside this world. That realization frightened her more than anything else, because emotional attachment inside dangerous environments often became another form of imprisonment. Dominic found her there hours later. For several silent moments, neither spoke while thunder echoed across the lake outside. Then Arabella finally asked a question haunting her constantly. "Why are you really protecting me?" Dominic remained quiet longer than usual before answering. "Because none of this started with you." The sadness hidden inside his voice unsettled her deeply. For the first time, Arabella realized Dominic no longer looked at her like revenge. He looked at her like guilt. That emotional shift terrified him as much as it terrified her. Because love inside violent empires always became weakness eventually, and weakness got people killed. The danger arrived sooner than either expected. Just before midnight, the following evening, Arabella sat alone near her bedroom window, overlooking the dark estate grounds below. Rain tapped softly against the glass while distant security patrols moved through the property beneath floodlights. Then everything shattered. A deafening crack exploded through the room as a sniper bullet tore directly through the bedroom window inches from her head. Glass erupted across the floor, while Arabella collapsed screaming beside the bed. And somewhere beyond the darkness surrounding the mansion, someone prepared to try again. The second Dominic pulled Arabella onto the ballroom floor. Every mafia leader in New York realized the fear Don was finally losing control. The sniper attack changed everything inside Dominic DeLuca's empire. By sunrise, armed guards occupied every level of the mansion, while security convoys blocked nearby roads surrounding the estate. Dominic's men searched abandoned buildings across Chicago, hunting the shooter responsible for targeting Arabella. They found nothing. That failure made the atmosphere even more dangerous, because Dominic never failed publicly. Arabella barely slept after the attack. Shattered glass still covered parts of her bedroom floor, while hidden fear lingered inside every corner of the mansion. Even silence sounded threatening now. Yet despite the violence surrounding her life, another emotion disturbed her far more deeply. She no longer feared Dominic the way she once had. That realization haunted her constantly. Somewhere between betrayal, protection, and survival, the line separating hatred from emotional attachment had slowly begun disappearing. And inside violent worlds, emotional weakness became fatal. 3 days later, Dominic made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He agreed to attend the Verona summit. The gathering represented one of the largest underground meetings in recent criminal history, a high-level negotiation bringing together mafia organizations from Chicago, New York, Boston, and Las Vegas after weeks of escalating violence. Officially, the summit existed to restore peace between rival families before open war destroyed business operations nationwide. Unofficially, everyone expected bloodshed. The event took place inside the Blackthorn Grand Hotel, overlooking downtown Chicago. Massive crystal chandeliers illuminated marble floors, while politicians, judges, criminal financiers, and organized crime leaders gathered beneath impossible luxury. Every powerful figure in America's underground world seemed present, and nearly all of them wanted Arabella gone. The moment she entered the ballroom beside Dominic, whispers spread through the crowd instantly. Expensive dresses brushed against polished floors, while elite guests observed her with the same cold curiosity reserved for dangerous scandals. The woman who rejected Dominic DeLuca publicly, the daughter of a traitor, the weakness threatening Chicago's most feared empire. Arabella felt every judgmental stare follow her movement through the ballroom. But something else unsettled her more. Fear, not her fear. Theirs. Because despite the rumors surrounding Dominic's emotional instability, nobody inside the ballroom dared challenge him directly. Powerful men lowered their voices whenever he approached. Rival leaders carefully avoided provocative comments. Dominic still terrified them all. Yet tonight, beneath the controlled silence, another emotion existed inside him too. Arabella noticed it immediately. Fear. For the first time since entering his world, Dominic looked genuinely uncertain. Not physically afraid, emotionally afraid. The realization shook her deeply, because men like Dominic DeLuca were not supposed to fear anything. But tonight, surrounded by enemies, hidden weapons, political manipulation, and betrayal waiting behind every smile, he kept watching her constantly, protectively, like he already sensed disaster approaching. The ballroom atmosphere grew heavier as the evening progressed. Rival organizations negotiated alliances beneath elegant music, while security teams quietly monitored every movement from surrounding balconies. Hidden tension infected every conversation. Weapons rested beneath designer jackets. Armed guards stood disguised as hotel staff. Politicians laughed beside criminals financing violence across half the country. The entire ballroom operated like a beautiful lie moments away from collapsing. And somewhere inside the chaos, betrayal slowly unfolded. Celeste Moretti moved through the gathering like poison wrapped in silk. Dressed in black velvet and diamonds, she drifted between rival mafia leaders, whispering carefully chosen information into powerful ears. Arabella watched her closely throughout the evening. Celeste never raised her voice, never appeared emotional, yet somehow every conversation she touched grew darker afterward. One New York family suddenly questioned Dominic's loyalty publicly after speaking with her. A Chicago financier abruptly withdrew support from one of Dominic's shipping routes. Rumors about Arabella possessing hidden federal evidence spread aggressively across the ballroom within hours. Celeste manipulated people brilliantly, not through violence, through insecurity. She understood that fear could destroy empires faster than bullets when whispered into the right minds. Meanwhile, Naomi Pierce operated just as dangerously from the political side of the room. The federal investigator spent most of the evening speaking privately with senators, judges, and wealthy corporate executives connected to ongoing corruption investigations. Yet despite her government status, Naomi moved through criminal circles comfortably, too comfortably. Arabella slowly realized the terrifying truth. Naomi did not belong to either side. She belonged to power itself. Whoever controlled the future would earn her loyalty. That intellectual realization exposed something ugly about America's elite systems. Law enforcement, organized crime, media influence, and political leadership were no longer separate worlds. They had merged completely. The ballroom represented proof. Corruption no longer hid in shadows. It wore designer clothing and attended charity galas openly. The emotional weight of that realization followed Arabella as the evening continued deeper into psychological warfare. Every smile concealed strategy. Every polite conversation carried hidden threats beneath elegant language. Then Dominic did something nobody expected. He walked directly toward Arabella through the ballroom crowd and held out his hand. The music softened instantly around them. Silence spread through nearby guests. Because everyone remembered the cathedral. Everyone remembered the woman who publicly rejected him at the altar. And now, months later, Dominic DeLuca was asking her to dance in front of every major criminal organization in America. Arabella hesitated only briefly before placing her hand into his. The ballroom watched in stunned silence as Dominic guided her toward the center floor, beneath golden chandeliers and hundreds of observing eyes. The symbolism terrified everyone present. This was not romance. It was declaration. Dominic was publicly choosing Arabella, despite the political damage surrounding her existence. And organized crime families immediately understood the danger of that choice. As the music played softly around them, Arabella felt Dominic's hand tighten slightly against hers. His expression remained controlled for crowd watching nearby, but standing close enough revealed another truth hidden beneath the calm. Exhaustion. The weight of constant violence, betrayal, and emotional conflict had finally begun breaking through the armor surrounding him. For several quiet moments, neither spoke. Yet something intimate formed between them anyway. Not peace. Understanding. Arabella suddenly recognized how lonely Dominic truly was inside the empire he built. Every alliance surrounding him depended on fear rather than trust. Every relationship carried hidden calculation. Even loyalty inside organized crime lasted only until survival demanded betrayal. Dominic ruled thousands of dangerous men, but emotionally, he stood completely alone. That realization softened something painful inside her. Then the ballroom atmosphere shifted violently. A powerful New York crime boss publicly questioned Dominic's leadership from across the dance floor, implying that sentiment had weakened Chicago's organization. The insult carried obvious meaning. Arabella. Several rival figures supported the criticism immediately, while hidden tension spread through surrounding tables. Political allies exchanged nervous looks as security teams subtly repositioned themselves near exits. War hovered inches beneath the ballroom surface now. Dominic stopped dancing. Slowly, he turned toward the rival leader with an expression colder than anything Arabella had witnessed before. For one dangerous second, the entire ballroom held its breath. Then Dominic crossed the line publicly. He exposed hidden financial records connecting several rival organizations to federal trafficking investigations directly in front of politicians, journalists, and criminal elites. Panic exploded across the room instantly. Powerful men shouted accusations, while security teams reached for concealed weapons. Corrupt senators attempted leaving discreetly before reporters intercepted them near the ballroom exits. The corruption poisoning America's elite systems suddenly stood exposed beneath chandelier light, and Dominic revealed it intentionally. Fear spread rapidly through every organization present. Because if Dominic possessed enough evidence to destroy political careers publicly, then nobody inside the ballroom remained safe anymore. The summit collapsed into chaos. Rival families abandoned diplomacy entirely, while emergency meetings erupted across private suites throughout the hotel. Security patrols doubled. Armed escorts moved political figures toward underground exits. Everyone prepared for war. And standing inside the center of the collapsing ballroom, Arabella realized something devastating. Dominic no longer cared about protecting his empire. He only cared about protecting her. That emotional shift terrified her because she finally understood the truth hidden beneath his actions. Love had entered a world built entirely around violence. And violent worlds destroyed love eventually. The tension reached breaking point near midnight. Music still played softly through the ballroom speakers despite the psychological warfare consuming the hotel. Armed guards monitored every entrance while rival organizations whispered strategies across private tables. Then suddenly, every ballroom door locked at once. A sharp metallic sound echoed through the hall. For one suspended second, silence swallowed the room completely. Then gunshots exploded somewhere inside the mansion corridors beyond the ballroom walls. By sunrise, the mansion floors were covered in blood, and Arabella finally understood why loving a mafia king destroyed everyone around him. The first gunshot shattered the illusion of peace inside the Blackthorn Grand Hotel. Screams erupted across the ballroom as armed men overturned tables and reached beneath jackets for concealed weapons. Crystal glasses exploded across marble floors while politicians rushed desperately toward locked exits, now refusing to open. Panic spread faster than bullets. Arabella barely had time to react before Dominic grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind a concrete support column near the ballroom center. More gunfire erupted somewhere beyond the hallways, while security teams shouted conflicting orders through communication devices. The summit had become an ambush, and judging by the precision of the attack, someone inside Dominic's organization helped plan it. The realization hit him immediately. Arabella saw it in his eyes. Betrayal. Dominic's guards fired toward the eastern entrance as masked gunmen stormed the hotel corridors beyond the ballroom. Wealthy guests collapsed beneath tables, while rival mafia figures escaped through hidden exits previously prepared for emergencies. But Dominic remained focused only on Arabella. Even during chaos, his attention never left her. That terrified her almost as much as the violence itself, because people willing to sacrifice empires for love eventually destroyed themselves completely. Dominic moved her quickly through private hallways behind the ballroom, while gunfire echoed across the hotel like thunder. Bodies already covered sections of carpeted corridors. Guards, staff members, hotel employees caught between organized warfare and political betrayal. Some had never carried weapons. A young waitress lay motionless near the elevator entrance, still clutching shattered champagne glasses in trembling fingers. One elderly hotel worker bled heavily against the wall, while guests pushed past him desperately, trying to survive. Violence inside criminal empires never stayed contained to guilty people. Innocent lives always paid the first price. That truth finally shattered the romantic illusion Arabella unconsciously built around Dominic's world. This was not power. It was destruction wearing expensive suits. The escape convoy reached Dominic's estate shortly before dawn beneath armored escort vehicles and constant gunfire across Chicago streets. But the mansion no longer resembled a controlled fortress they left behind earlier that evening. Smoke rose from parts of the property already under attack. Flames burned near the western security gate, while armed men exchanged automatic gunfire across the estate grounds. Several mansion windows shattered outward from explosions inside the lower levels. War had officially arrived. Dominic reacted instantly. Order spread through his organization with ruthless efficiency, while surviving guards secured defensive positions throughout the estate. Rival organizations clearly coordinated the attack carefully, because multiple entrances came under assault simultaneously. Yet, something disturbed Dominic more than the violence itself. Someone inside his inner circle kept leaking security information. The traitors were still active. Arabella remained hidden inside a reinforced lower-level office, while chaos consumed the mansion above. Explosions shook the walls repeatedly while security radios flooded with desperate messages from wounded guards and collapsing defenses. Fear spread through every level of the estate. No one knew who remained loyal anymore. Then the betrayals finally surfaced publicly. One of Dominic's oldest captains attempted opening the eastern gates for Victor Kane's approaching convoy before Dominic executed him personally in front of surviving guards. No hesitation, no speech, only a single gunshot echoing through the mansion corridor. Arabella witnessed the aftermath moments later, while blood spread slowly across imported marble floors beneath the dead captain's body. The emotional coldness inside Dominic's expression frightened her deeply. Not because he enjoyed violence, because years of betrayal taught him survival demanded it, and somewhere beneath the fear tightening her chest, Arabella recognized another horrifying truth. Part of her understood why he pulled the trigger. That realization damaged something inside her permanently. As the attack intensified, more traitors emerged throughout the organization. Security teams turned against each other. Hidden alliances collapsed openly while rival families attempted seizing sections of Dominic's empire through coordinated violence. The criminal kingdom he spent years building was collapsing internally, exactly as Victor Kane planned. By mid-morning, Naomi Pierce arrived at the estate surrounded by armed federal agents claiming emergency authority connected to anti-terror operations. But Arabella immediately sensed manipulation beneath the official explanation. Naomi moved through the war zone too calmly, almost like she expected the massacre unfolding around her. While federal teams secured evidence from Dominic's private offices, Naomi secretly negotiated with both surviving mafia captains and political representatives simultaneously. Her true loyalty remained impossible to identify. Government, organized crime, corporate power. Naomi served whichever side guaranteed her future influence. That intellectual realization exposed the terrifying evolution of corruption inside America's elite systems. People like Naomi no longer protected law or morality. They protected opportunity. Meanwhile, Victor Kane's real motives slowly emerged through intercepted communications recovered during the assault. The missing evidence from years earlier threatened far more than organized crime exposure. The files connected politicians, federal agencies, corporate investors, and international trafficking operations into one enormous hidden financial system worth billions. Victor never wanted the evidence destroyed. He wanted control over it, because whoever possessed the information controlled everyone tied to it. Blackmail became more powerful than money, and Arabella's father accidentally helped create the system before trying to escape it. The emotional weight of the truth became unbearable as the mansion descended deeper into violence. Smoke filled entire sections of the estate, while wounded guards crowded emergency medical rooms below ground. Then Celeste Moretti made her final move. Arabella discovered the betrayal accidentally after hearing Ray's voices near the private communications wing. Hidden behind a damaged hallway wall, she watched Celeste secretly transmitting Dominic's evacuation routes directly to Victor Kane's men outside the estate perimeter. Celeste never loved Dominic. She loved proximity to power, and now that his empire weakened, she abandoned him completely. But before Arabella could retreat quietly, Celeste noticed a reflection in the shattered hallway mirror. The atmosphere froze instantly. For one suspended moment, both women understood only one of them would leave the corridor alive. Celeste reached for the concealed pistol beneath her coat first. Arabella ran. Gunshots exploded behind her, while alarms echoed throughout the mansion. Guards rushed through smoke-covered hallways as Arabella sprinted toward the lower staircase, desperately trying to escape. Then Dominic appeared. The violence inside him surfaced completely for the first time. Gone was a controlled businessman hiding brutality beneath calm silence. What remained looked colder, more dangerous. A man shaped entirely through grief and survival. He disarmed Celeste within seconds before dragging her across the hallway floor, while terrified guards watched silently nearby. Dominic did not scream. That made the moment worse. His voice remained quiet while confronting her betrayal, almost emotionally empty beneath the rage. Years of loyalty, obsession, and manipulation collapsed between them inside the burning corridor. Then Dominic ordered her removed from the estate permanently. No one asked where she would go afterward. Inside criminal empires, some endings did not require explanation. The emotional aftermath shattered Arabella internally. She feared Dominic now more than ever after witnessing the full brutality hidden beneath his control. Yet she also trusted him more deeply than anyone else surrounding her life. Fear and loyalty twisted together until she no longer recognized the difference. During the chaos, another devastating secret emerged from hidden files recovered inside Vincent Hayes' old financial archives. Arabella's childhood had never been accidental. Her father originally arranged connections between the Hayes family and Dominic's organization years, before she ever met him publicly. Portions of her education, social access, and financial opportunities were quietly funded through hidden laundering systems tied to organized crime. Even her privileged upbringing carried blood beneath it. The realization emotionally destroyed the final illusion separating her from Dominic's world. She was never outside the empire. She had been connected to it her entire life. As political corruption leaked publicly across national media, Chicago descended toward chaos completely. News stations reported resignations, federal raids, financial scandals, and violent conflicts spreading through multiple states. Victor Kane's empire began fracturing under exposure. But Dominic's organization fractured with it. By evening, sections of the mansion collapsed under continuous assault. Fire spread to the western wing, while surviving guards evacuated wounded staff toward underground tunnels beneath the estate. Arabella remained beside Dominic throughout the collapse despite every instinct telling her to flee. Not because she stopped fearing him, because abandoning him suddenly felt impossible. And Dominic noticed. The emotional distance separating them for months finally cracked inside the burning mansion corridors. No confessions passed between them. No romantic declarations softened the destruction surrounding their lives. Only trust, raw and terrifying. For the first time since entering his world, Arabella understood Dominic no longer protected her out of guilt or revenge. He protected her because losing her would destroy whatever remained human inside him. That realization came moments before disaster struck completely. A massive explosion tore through the lower east wing of the estate with enough force to shake the entire mansion foundation. Fire erupted across staircases, while sections of ceiling collapsed violently into surrounding hallways. Screams echoed through smoke-covered corridors as surviving guards scrambled toward emergency exits. Dominic grabbed Arabella seconds before another explosion shattered the upper balcony nearby. The mansion was dying around them. Flames spread rapidly through support beams, while emergency lights flickered across collapsing hallways filled with smoke and debris. Dominic forced Arabella toward the underground evacuation tunnel beneath the estate, while gunfire continued outside the property walls. She refused to leave him initially, but Dominic pushed her forward anyway. For one brief moment beneath the burning mansion lights, Arabella saw exhaustion and sadness overwhelm the cold armor surrounding him, almost like he already knew how the night would end. Then another explosion separated them violently. The floor collapsed between the corridors, while fire consumed the staircase behind Dominic completely. Arabella screamed his name through smoke and fallen debris as guards dragged her toward the emergency exit tunnel. But Dominic DeLuca disappeared inside the burning mansion before anyone could reach him. Even after Dominic vanished in the explosion, powerful men across America still whispered his name with fear. The fire consumed the DeLuca estate for nearly 11 hours. By the time emergency crews finally controlled the destruction, half the mansion overlooking Lake Michigan had collapsed into blackened ruins. News helicopters circled the property while federal agents sealed surrounding roads beneath national security orders. Official reports listed Dominic DeLuca among the dead. No body was ever recovered. That detail alone terrified people, because men like Dominic rarely disappeared quietly. 3 months passed after the explosion, yet Chicago still moved like a city expecting war to return at any moment. Criminal organizations fractured into violent smaller factions fighting for abandoned territory, once controlled by the DeLuca Empire. Power no longer belonged to one king. It belonged to chaos. Arabella Hayes tried rebuilding a normal life far from the ruins left behind by Dominic's world. Federal protection relocated her temporarily into a quiet apartment complex near Boston under a different last name. Newspapers stopped mentioning her publicly after larger political scandals consumed national attention. On the surface, she survived. Emotionally, she remained trapped inside the fire. Sleep became nearly impossible. Every loud noise triggered panic buried deep inside her nervous system. Some nights, she woke convinced smoke still surrounded her, while Dominic's voice echoed somewhere beyond collapsing walls. Trauma followed her everywhere. The psychological damage felt worse because part of her still believed Dominic survived the explosion somehow, and another part feared wanting that possibility. The emotional conflict exhausted her constantly. Months earlier, Arabella viewed Dominic as a monster responsible for dragging her into violence and corruption, but after learning the truth surrounding her father, Victor Kane, and Luca DeLuca's death, the world no longer looked simple enough for clear villains. Dominic destroyed lives, yet he also protected hers repeatedly. That contradiction haunted her more than grief itself. Meanwhile, the underworld transformed rapidly after Dominic's disappearance. Victor Kane expanded his influence aggressively across Chicago, New York, and Boston, while weakened criminal organizations either joined his growing empire or vanished completely. Politicians publicly condemned organized crime during televised speeches, while secretly accepting protection agreements behind closed doors. Corruption adapted faster than justice. It always did. Federal investigations connected to trafficking operations spread nationwide, as leaked financial records exposed hidden partnerships between criminal syndicates, business executives, and government officials. Arrests filled television broadcasts daily, but powerful names rarely stayed in prison long. Arabella noticed another disturbing pattern, too. Several witnesses tied to the investigations disappeared mysteriously before testifying. The system was cleaning itself quietly, and somewhere inside that cleanup process, she remained a dangerous loose end. The first coded message arrived 6 weeks after Dominic's supposed death. No return address, no fingerprints, only a small envelope delivered beneath her apartment door sometime after midnight. Inside rested a single playing card, the King of Hearts. Nothing else. At first, Arabella assumed the message represented another threat connected to surviving enemies from Dominic's empire. But after turning the card over carefully, she noticed tiny handwritten numbers hidden near one corner. Coordinates. The location pointed toward a train station outside Chicago. Fear tightened inside her chest immediately, because only one person ever used coded systems connected to playing cards before. Dominic. The realization shattered months of emotional numbness instantly. Someone wanted her attention, and somehow, deep down, she already knew who. Over the following weeks, more coded messages appeared unexpectedly in different locations. Hidden inside newspapers, taped beneath cafe tables, slipped quietly into coat pockets by strangers disappearing before she could react. Every clue carried the same message beneath the mystery. Stay alive. Someone was still protecting her from the shadows. But if Dominic survived, why remain hidden while his empire collapsed publicly? That question consumed her thoughts constantly. At the same time, danger slowly returned around her life again. A black SUV began appearing repeatedly near her apartment building. Unknown men followed her through crowded streets before disappearing whenever she noticed them directly. Twice, her apartment looked slightly disturbed after returning home despite locked doors remaining untouched. The paranoia returned stronger than before. Arabella no longer trusted silence. One rainy evening after work, she found another coded message hidden inside her mailbox beneath ordinary advertisements. This one terrified her. 3 words written carefully across folded paper. He knows you're alive. Victor Kane. Arabella understood immediately. The message confirmed 2 things simultaneously. Dominic survived, and Victor Kane was searching for her again. The emotional pressure became unbearable afterward. Federal agents assigned to monitor her protection offered little reassurance because corruption inside law enforcement remained impossible to measure anymore. Naomi Pierce resurfaced repeatedly on national television discussing anti-corruption reform while quietly avoiding questions involving Dominic DeLuca's disappearance. Arabella no longer trusted Naomi either. People surviving inside power structures rarely serve morality. They serve survival. The deeper mystery surrounding Dominic intensified after hidden financial records unexpectedly resurfaced online through anonymous encrypted leaks. Journalists across America published new evidence connecting Victor Kane to international trafficking routes, offshore laundering systems, and political blackmail operations stretching back nearly 20 years. Someone inside the shadows was dismantling Victor's empire piece by piece. The methods felt familiar, strategic, patient, exactly like Dominic. Then Arabella uncovered another devastating truth about her father. Through archived federal files secretly mailed to her apartment, she learned Vincent Hayes never willingly betrayed Luca DeLuca years earlier. Victor Kane manipulated the situation intentionally after discovering Luca planned exposing the trafficking network publicly. Vincent attempted helping Luca escape with evidence before the harbor ambush occurred, but someone inside the organization leaked their movements first. Victor ordered Luca's murder personally, and afterward, he spent years convincing Dominic that betrayal came from Vincent Hayes instead. The realization emotionally shattered Arabella all over again. Her father was guilty of terrible crimes, but he had not been the monster Dominic believed, which meant Dominic built years of revenge around manipulated lies. The tragedy poisoned everyone involved long before Arabella entered the story. That intellectual truth disturbed her deeply because it exposed the real enemy beneath all the violence. Not revenge, manipulation. Victor Kane destroyed people by turning grief against itself. As winter approached, the coded messages grew more urgent. Several carried warnings about surveillance around Arabella's apartment. Another instructed her never to trust federal escorts assigned to protect her. Then one final clue changed everything. A photograph, old and partially burned around the edges. The image showed the interior of an abandoned cathedral outside Chicago, with a handwritten phrase across the bottom, "Where the dead still pray." Arabella recognized the location immediately. St. Lazarus Cathedral. The church had been abandoned for nearly 20 years after organized crime violence destroyed portions of the surrounding neighborhood. Rumors connected the cathedral to secret meetings during the early rise of Chicago's criminal families. And according to old newspaper archives, Luca DeLuca attended services there regularly before his death. Fear mixed with desperate curiosity as Arabella traveled back toward Chicago alone several nights later despite every instinct warning her otherwise. Snow covered the empty streets surrounding St. Lazarus Cathedral when she finally arrived near midnight. The enormous Gothic structure towered above the neighborhood like a ghost forgotten by time. Broken stained glass windows reflected weak moonlight, while rusted gates creaked softly in the freezing wind. The atmosphere felt unreal, almost sacred. Arabella stepped cautiously through the abandoned cathedral entrance, while silence echoed across ruined wooden pews and cracked marble floors. Dust covered ancient statues beneath shadows stretching endlessly through the enormous sanctuary. For several long moments, she saw nothing. Then footsteps echoed somewhere beyond the altar. Slow, controlled, familiar. Her heart pounded violently as a dark figure emerged gradually from the shadows near the cathedral candles still burning mysteriously inside the ruined church. Tall, silent, wearing black, Arabella stopped breathing the moment moonlight revealed his face. Dominic DeLuca was alive. The final wedding between Arabella and Dominic began moments before an empire collapsed forever. For several silent seconds inside St. Lazarus Cathedral, Arabella could not move. The ruined church stood frozen beneath moonlight and dust while Dominic DeLuca watched her from the shadows near the altar. Time itself seemed to pause between them. He looked different, thinner, more exhausted. The cold control once defining him had faded beneath visible scars, sleepless eyes, an emotional weight carved deeply across his face. The explosion destroyed more than his empire. It destroyed the man he used to be. Yet despite everything, the bloodshed, betrayal, and fear surrounding their lives, Arabella still felt the same dangerous pull toward him standing there inside the abandoned cathedral. That terrified her, because love surviving destruction often became more powerful than love born in peace. Dominic stepped forward slowly beneath the broken stained glass windows, while snow drifted quietly outside the ruined church. "You shouldn't have come here," he said softly. But Arabella immediately understood the contradiction hidden inside his voice. He wanted her there, Months of silence collapsed between them painfully. Questions filled her mind, but one truth mattered more than anything else. He survived. Against every logical possibility, Dominic DeLuca survived a fire that destroyed his empire, and somehow, part of her never stopped believing he would. The cathedral carried the heavy silence of unfinished grief as Dominic explained the truth hidden behind his disappearance. The mansion explosion was never accidental. Dominic planned portions of his own downfall after discovering Victor Kane infiltrated nearly every level of his organization. Remaining alive publicly would have triggered immediate war across multiple cities, costing thousands more lives. So Dominic allowed the underworld to believe he died. From the shadows, he spent months dismantling Victor's financial systems piece by piece through hidden leaks, destroyed alliances and manipulated betrayals. Not for revenge anymore, for exposure. That realization surprised Arabella deeply because the man standing before her no longer sounded obsessed with power. He sounded tired of violence completely. The emotional transformation inside him felt genuine. Years earlier, Luca DeLuca's death poisoned Dominic's entire life through grief and rage manipulated carefully by Victor Kane. Every violent decision afterward came from believing Arabella's father betrayed his brother intentionally. But after uncovering the full truth, Dominic realized something devastating. Victor weaponized everyone's pain against each other. Vincent Hayes, Luca, Arabella, even Dominic himself. Entire empires collapsed because one man understood how easily grief could become hatred. The emotional weight of that realization changed Dominic permanently. For the first time since Arabella met him, he no longer looked like a king protecting territory. He looked like a man mourning years stolen from his humanity. Then another sound echoed through the cathedral entrance. Footsteps. Multiple people entered the ruined church beneath armed escort and flickering flashlight beams. Victor Kane arrived first. Elegant even now, Victor moved to the cathedral calmly, while armed mercenaries secured surrounding exits. Beside him stood Naomi Pierce, wearing a long black coat beneath federal identification, hidden partially inside her pocket. The final betrayal revealed itself instantly. Naomi never investigated corruption to destroy it. She managed its survival. And Victor Kane represented the highest surviving layer of that corruption. The cathedral atmosphere darkened immediately as all major players finally stood face to face beneath the shattered ceiling of St. Lazarus. Years of manipulation, death, political corruption, trafficking, revenge, all roads led here. Victor appeared almost amused studying Dominic alive before him. The dead always become dangerous when they return, he said quietly. Arabella noticed something disturbing immediately. Victor did not fear Dominic. He feared exposure. That was why Naomi remained beside him despite federal investigations spreading nationwide. Too many politicians, judges, corporations, and intelligence officials remain connected to the hidden financial systems Victor built over decades. Destroying Victor publicly meant destabilizing powerful people across America, which meant certain institutions preferred silence over justice. That intellectual truth represented the darkest realization of all. Corruption survived because society quietly depended on it. Dominic understood this now, too. That was why he no longer fought for empire. He fought to expose the machine itself before it consumed more lives. The confrontation escalated quickly beneath the cathedral shadows. Victor finally admitted orchestrating Luca DeLuca's murder after learning Luca planned leaking trafficking evidence years earlier. Vincent Hayes attempted helping Luca escape with the files, but Victor manipulated the situation carefully enough to frame Vincent afterward. One death created decades of war, exactly as Victor intended. Arabella watched Dominic absorb the truth with terrifying silence. Years of hatred collapsed visibly inside him, while grief replaced rage completely. For the first time, Arabella understood Dominic's real tragedy. He spent half his life destroying himself over lies. Naomi eventually stepped forward carrying federal arrest documents prepared against Victor. But before anyone could believe justice finally arrived, Victor laughed quietly beneath the cathedral ceiling. Because Naomi's documents protected certain names intentionally. Not all of them. Powerful senators, corporate financiers, federal intelligence contacts, entire sections of corruption remained untouched. Naomi never intended destroying the system. only reorganizing it. That realization finally broke the fragile balance, holding the cathedral together emotionally. Dominic exposed the final hidden evidence publicly through encrypted files already scheduled for nationwide release. Financial records, trafficking routes, political blackmail archives, and names connected to decades of organized corruption spread across national media servers instantly. Phones throughout the cathedral erupted simultaneously. News alerts flooded every device. The empire was collapsing publicly, and no one could stop it anymore. Victor Kane's calm expression finally cracked. For the first time all night, genuine fear appeared inside his eyes, because Dominic accomplished something more dangerous than revenge. He removed secrecy. Outside the cathedral, distant sirens echoed across Chicago as federal convoys and emergency response teams moved toward St. Lazarus rapidly. The entire system was beginning to burn. Then Dominic turned toward Arabella. Beneath the ruined altar, the symbolism struck her instantly. Months earlier, she stood before him inside another cathedral, refusing marriage out of fear and manipulation. Now they faced each other again, surrounded not by luxury and lies, but by truth, destruction, and emotional ruin. The final wedding had already begun long ago, not through vows, through survival. Dominic stepped closer while chaos unfolded around them beyond the cathedral walls. No audience remained now, no politicians, no criminal empires pretending elegance. Only two broken people standing inside the ruins left behind by revenge. Arabella finally understood his real intention from the beginning. Dominic never wanted ownership over her. He wanted redemption through protecting the last innocent connection remaining from Luca's past. But somewhere along the way, redemption became love. And love transformed both of them painfully. Victor attempted escaping during the confusion as armed mercenaries opened fire toward Dominic's, remaining loyalists near the cathedral entrance. Gunshots exploded across the ruined church, while stained glass shattered violently overhead. Naomi disappeared into the chaos immediately, choosing survival once again over morality. The final battle consumed St. Lazarus beneath flames and collapsing stone. Dominic protected Arabella through the gunfire, while federal agents surrounded the cathedral outside. Smoke spread rapidly through ancient wooden beams after explosions erupted near the lower sanctuary. The church itself began collapsing around them. Victor Kane died near the altar after trying to destroy the remaining evidence physically before escaping. The empire he built through manipulation and corruption ended beneath falling fire and shattered marble. But the victory felt empty. Too many lives already disappeared. Too much blood stained the path leading there. As flames spread across the cathedral ceiling, Dominic guided Arabella toward the rear exit beneath collapsing arches and burning debris. Federal agents shouted warnings from outside, while smoke swallowed sections of the sanctuary completely. Then Dominic stopped moving. Arabella turned toward him in confusion. For one final moment beneath the burning cathedral light, she saw peace replace the grief haunting him for years. Dominic knew he could not escape the life he built. Too many governments wanted him dead. Too many enemies survived. Too many crimes carried his name forever. But Arabella still had a future beyond the ruins. That mattered more to him now than power ever did. Before she fully realized his intention, Dominic pushed her toward the collapsing side exit as burning beams crashed across the sanctuary behind them. Arabella screamed while federal agents pulled her away from the flames spreading through St. Lazarus Cathedral. The last thing she saw clearly was Dominic standing alone inside the burning church beneath falling fire and shattered stained glass. Then the cathedral collapsed. Hours later, emergency crews searched the ruins while national news stations broadcast the destruction live across America. Politicians resigned overnight. Federal investigations expanded nationwide. Hidden corruption networks began falling publicly for the first time in decades. The empire truly collapsed. But as smoke continued rising from St. Lazarus Cathedral beneath the cold Chicago sunrise, Arabella noticed one terrifying detail buried inside the official reports. Dominic DeLuca's body was never recovered from the ruins.